So we are now in episode 3 or day 3. We will be creating the CRUD routes. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. These are the 4 basic things that you can do with data, and it lets you build our menu of operations, if that makes sense. So if you remember yesterday, we have created the database connection, but we still need to create the tables, and we do it by using this piece of code here. Base.metadata that create all, then we are again binding the engine. So this will create the tables. We will see later on the to-dos, the TB here, and then I will create a function that will get our database. So this one. So this function, it will get the database. It's like getting the key to our database. Imagine that our database is a vault, and this will give you the key so that you can enter the vault or so that you can open the vault. So we could just use this function every time. First, we will create the endpoint to read our to-dos. So it's the R in CRUD, meaning reading. I'll just place it in this part, but I will arrange this later on when I push it on the GitHub repo. Alright, so this is now our get method. So this is a route that we will call so that we can get all the to-dos inside our database. The response model tells API that we are going to return a list of to-do objects. What is this to-do object? If you remember, we have created this earlier. This one. So it's a list of this to do. So FastAPI will use this to validate our response. This means that this to-dos that we are returning should correspond to this. So this to-dos here is the path to this function here. If you remember, it will somewhat look like this. Because we are developing locally, it should look like this. For reference, this root route is like this, right? Since it has no defined path in here. But this get method here, we defined that path as a to-dos path. So it should look like this. So whatever base URL you have, for example, website called application.com, it should also look like this. Moving on, this is the function that is associated with this get method. So the get to-dos, it depends what you want to name this. I will name this get to-dos. So this argument here, so this inside here, this is basically what you always do. You pass it the session equals depends get db. We have an argument called db. It is a session, and that session we assign it a value, which is this depends, and then pass the get db. So FastAPI will call your getDB here that we have created earlier, this one, and inject a working database session. So that way you don't have to manually connect to the database in every function. Basically just copy this code. So most of the time you would use it like this. And this piece of code, this is how you get everything from the to-dos table inside our database. Right? Since our table resides inside our database, we need to define the table that we are querying, which is the to-do db, and here this is our database model, and this is the table we will be referencing, and we just return it, the to-dos, just basically this. Now this piece of code will fetch all the to-dos that are existing inside the to-dos table. But what if you want to fetch one single to-do item? This is where the ID is very useful. You will see it like this if you notice whatever website you're using, and then you click on a specific article or page or picture or post, then it will have a URL like this one. So the one here, or let's say 999, this would be the ID. and we will call this endpoint by specifying the ID like this. So in this part, so what you call this curly braces thing here is a path parameter. It will allow users to request for a specific item. So in our case, a to-do item using the ID as a reference. So this 999 should represent a to-do item ID. And we also pass it as an argument here. So don't forget about that. And the to-do ID here, the type should be int. So I also forgot, the response model for this is just a to-do. It's not a list since we are just fetching for one to-do. And then this is basically how you call it using our database and tables. So again, query to-do DB, which is our table here, our database model. This table resides inside the DB, and then we filter it. We have this filter method. It will only look for the rows where the ID matches on the to-do ID that we have passed this. For example, 999. It will only filter or search for the row that has a to-do ID equal to what we have passed to this endpoint. Finally, we get the first result since we only need one. If not to do here, this just means if there's no to do item that has been found. It's like saying sorry, we don't have a file with that number. It should raise an HTTP exception, so you will see a 404 when you call this endpoint and you don't see any to do item that has that ID. So the 404, I think you're familiar with it. When you go to a website and it will say 404 not found. And then we have now the R in the CRUD. The next one, how about we have the create? So we have now added this code. This will be our create. This will be the C in our CRUD. We still name the route as to-dos. So you could have the same route actually, to-dos here. We also have to-dos here, but this is a post method, or this is a create method. While the to-dos route that we have specified earlier is a get or a read. So yeah, it's just like that. So the response model here will just be a to-do. It shall receive this to-do create object. And if you wonder where will this come from, it will be from the request body. And I will test later on how we could call this post method so that we can create our first to do. So in this code here, db to do, this db to do, this is just a variable to store our new to do, and we will use this to do db here. This one, our table, our database model. So we will use that database model and then basically assign it to the to do that we receive from the request body. So it's just like that. To do the title, to do the description, and this to do here should have these fields as well. And here, completed equals false. Again, the new to do will start as incomplete. For the created at, it's just datetime.utc now, which is just the current time that this to do is created right now. And then the next step, we have db.add. We are just staging the new to do for saving. So we're just preparing it. We're just preparing the data. And then we add this, we pass this inside the add method, the db to do here, our variable, and then commit. This commit, it will save it in the database and it will actually commit the changes. It will save the changes. So for this code here, it will update this db to do and it will get the data from the actual database. So it should have the ID now. In here, we are not generating the ID ourselves, but when we have the refresh here, it should have an ID and then we return it. I think it's time to test these methods here, our create and read. So we already have the C and R on our CRUD. So I'm going to test this. So what you need to do so that you can run our backend is this: uvcorn main app and then reload. Application startup complete. Alright, so it's complete. What I will be using is an application called Postman. this is actually an effective way for programmers to test the backend. Don't mind all the tabs there. So it says that we are running on the 127.0.0.1 is just localhost. But I will just copy this. So how about we create our first to-dos? Alright. So what was the path name again? What's the route name? So the to-dos. So if you notice, the to-dos .db was created when we run the code. So yeah, that's good. And then going back to Postman to-dos, this is what I said about the request body. So in this one, our request body should look like this. I am selecting body and then raw, so I could write it like a JSON format, like this one. So I want my title to buy groceries and the description is milk, eggs, and bread. If you look at the code here, it should accept a title and description, which is an optional one. The completed is equals to false. This is not needed since it will always default to false. Then created that, we also don't need to pass that. We just need these two. So let's see what response do we get. It says internal server error. Let's check. What does it say here? Alright, I think I know the error here. We are creating the table, right? And then we have not declared, or we have not defined the table yet. So it should be here. Okay, this should work now. It's not. Oh, it was not saved. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try it again. Yes. So there you go. You have your first to-do item inside our database, and that is good. As you can see here, it says the buy groceries, which is part of our request body, and then milk, eggs, and bread that we have passed. So since we have our first to-do item, we could also get that specific to-do, and we can use this. So we just append. So what is the ID? It says 1. Also, if you're using Postman, make sure that you change this method here. So since we are doing a create or a post method, we set it to post, but now we are setting it to get. So we are basically telling our backend to fetch the to-do item with an ID, with the ID of 1. So it should respond with this one. And it showed us the correct one. How about we create another one? Just create another one. How about study web dev? Description. This could be null. Or we could erase the description. We just want the title. Okay? Alright, let's send this. And it created another to-do item. The title study web dev. Then we can get that specific to-do item. It will show the same thing. But if you remember, we have an endpoint here called that will fetch all the to-do items. So if we call this get here, it should show the buy groceries one and this study web dev one. And there you go. We defined it as a list of to-dos, right? So it's like this. And we have successfully fetched or read the two to-do items, which is the buy groceries and the study web dev. So you should be proud of yourself if you've reached this far. I mean, I'm also proud of myself. I haven't really coded a full stack application from scratch in a long time, and it just makes me happy that I get it to work. So I think this video is lengthy now, so I will divide this into 2 parts. For the create and read, we are done with this. For the next episode, I will be adding the update and delete, which is also not that hard. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.